Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. This is your host, author, coach, and healer, Andy Grant. Please visit theandygrant.com to learn more about me. Real Men Feel reminds men that they are human beings and have the right to experience and express all of their emotions. We have conversations that most men are not having, but that all men and the women who love them can benefit from. My guest today is Patrick Leary. Patrick is a college professor and owner of Coaching LLC, a consulting company focused on the health and wellness of student athletes as they make life and career transitions. Patrick is also a domestic violence survivor who is dedicated to serving the global community of men who have endured physical abuse and mental anguish within a domestic relationship. The conversation today is pretty heavy. Patrick shares a 4 years long experience with our court system, numerous false charges made against him, the losing of so many aspects of his life and livelihood. Yet through it all, he keeps his humanity, hope, and resilience. Patrick offers advice for men in similar situations and changes he'd like to see in a legal system to better recognize and support male victims. Let's do it. Welcome to Real Men Feel, Patrick.
Great to be here, Andy. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I had Ann Silvers as a guest. She is an author writing about the abuse of men by women. And that was 4 years ago. And in those 4 years, you came into contact with her and she recommended that you talk to me. And we did talk like 3 years ago, right?
We sure did. And, I'm glad that we stayed connected and really happy to be with you today to share my story.
So you are a domestic violence survivor who was also falsely charged by your former partner. So you had a years-long journey through our fabulous legal system. And when we talked a while ago, this was still going on. So now things are resolved?
Yes, for the most part, yes. So I've cleared all of the false charges. I've been through, hell and back, as they say. And, it's been a really long 4 years. And I'm now ready to, start to share and to really help others that may be facing similar type situations.
So can you take us back to the first point in your relationship that you realized you were in an abusive relationship?
Certainly. Yeah, I've never been around abuse my entire life. I was raised by wonderful parents, came up in a wonderful family, and certainly learned how to treat people as a result of how my parents treated others and how I was raised. And, it was about 4 months into my relationship where I was abused, physically assaulted by my partner at the time. And it was very strange to me. It was very abnormal. I don't resolve through abuse and I never have. And it was very foreign to me. And I just I guess, shrugged it off at the moment, keeping in mind that, I had been friends with a partner before we kind of consummated our relationship. I had known her for less than a year before the abuse began. And once it started, it seemingly didn't end.
Were you married at the time or living together? What was the situation?
No, yeah, we were engaged at the time, living together. She was actually pregnant at the time that the abuse began, and then it continued after she had our child. So it was really a very difficult situation for me. And that's why I'm here today, to try to share my experience in the event that it could help just one person that would be in a like situation.
What made you stay in this relationship since if it was not a one-time event? The abuse happened on a recurring basis, at least. And so why make yourself stay there for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Which I ask myself frequently. I journal a lot, and before today's meeting with you, I went back to my notes and I asked myself that question a lot. I think it's because I believe in people and I'd never been around abuse, so I didn't know how to respond to it in the moment. So instead of asking for help for myself, I tried to find help for her.
Mm.
And I reached out to, I chronicled every moment of the abuse, every incident. I wrote a long letter to her at first that I in fact was in an abusive relationship, to which she agreed. And I shared that with her family, because I thought that it would be appropriate for them to understand that I needed some help to be able to help her. Um, so that's a great question. And again, to this day, it's something that I want to be able to share my story to help others, because hindsight, as you know, is 2020, and I would have handled it differently. But at that time, I thought the right thing to do was to try to help her instead of try to help myself.
Mm. At what point did this become so much that you decided that enough was enough, and you did end this relationship?
It's when she brought it in to the children, and she hurt my child. She hurt my son. And that's when my legal troubles began, because I called 911 immediately. I previously mentioned to her we were in counseling at the time. She finally was seeking counseling for her issues. And, I said, if you bring the abuse, I said, I can handle it as an adult, but if I ever see this, and I'll work with you to seek the help that you need. But if you ever bring this into our family, down to our children, it, we can't exist. We can't exist as a unit. And that in fact happened, where she physically assaulted my child, and I in turn called 911 as a result of that.
What was your thought process when you were calling 911? What did you expect to happen?
That I would get some help. I would get some relief of the situation that I was in. It was an untenable situation. I was holding um, a 6-month-old baby in one arm, and consoling my 8-year-old child in the other, that was hysterically crying, trying to escape from this individual. So I was in a very untenable. I needed help. That's when I knew I needed help, and I thought I was going to receive help.
And what did happen when the police arrived?
I was arrested.
Did your did your partner make charges against you at that time, or was this just automatic behavior by the police, or
No, she actually um, she injured herself while the police were en route, and she admitted as much. She self injured. She was smart enough to know that someone was going to be taken away, and she didn't want it to be her. So, it's the first person that the police saw was her. They saw that she was visibly upset and sustained an injury, that she harmed herself. And I was upstairs with the children trying to protect them from her at the time. And they barreled down the door and took the kids away. And next thing, I was gone. I was in, I was arrested.
how long was the legal battle from being arrested that night to resolution in court?
Here's the perplexing element to this whole story, is that following that incident, the the partner was very remorseful, understood that she did the wrong thing by me, understood that she abused the legal system. And, someone that is a college professor that has never committed any crime ever before had a serious charge against him. And I, Andy, to be honest with you, I had no idea I've never been in court. I appeared the next day, and I didn't realize how serious the charges were, because I hadn't committed a crime. And so what ended up happening was, she realized she wanted to stay in the relationship, and we did. I had a 8-year-old son with my ex-wife, and the 6-month-old at the time with her. And I'm very family oriented, so I really wanted to make sure I tried to take all the right steps to see this through. Again, knowing that that was a very traumatic experience for me, I knew at that time that I was going to leave her. I knew immediately that this was the time, but I had a serious charge levied against me. So I was in a very difficult situation with really no resources to support me other than my family and my friends. And it's quite humiliating, as you can imagine, you know, having this charge against you that is when you're an educator, you're, it was a very difficult situation for me. So what I ended up doing was I stayed in the relationship with her, but I ended up putting my condo up for sale. I knew that I couldn't be around her anymore. And in fact, after that night, I wouldn't allow, or my ex-wife wouldn't allow my child, my son, to be around this individual that had assaulted an 8-year-old child. So he wasn't allowed to see her anymore. I moved back in with my parents with my son, and I kept the condo. I put it up for sale, and that was a way for me to kind of break it off with her. I wasn't sure what the outcome would be, but that was what I thought would be the best way to separate myself from her and from the continued abuse. It was just a very toxic situation.
So you're kind of being an actor in this time, letting her think you want to continue the relationship while you're severing ties?
Yeah, it was very stressful because obviously I cared for her as a person, and I had this charge against me, and it was up to her to essentially relieve me of the charge. And she my lawyer at the time actually consulted me to be very nice to her, because the fate of my charge rested in her hands essentially. I really, as educated as I believe I am, I really wasn't as familiarized with the criminal justice system. And, she signed a victim impact statement saying that I didn't do it, that I never had laid a hand on her. But at the same time, she sensed that I was trying to remove myself from the relationship. And, she ended up moving back with her parents, and I ended up moving back with my parents temporarily, but we were still trying to find a way to maintain our relationship through that, following that initial incident.
What was the actual charge against you at that time?
Domestic violence, against a partner, assault and battery against a domestic partner.
And when she did the victim statement saying nothing had happened, did she have the ability, the power to stop the charge, or was it already?
She she did. However, she didn't show up in court that morning. She simply just filled out the victim impact statement, and then there was going to be another court date set, which there was. But this is just the beginning of the story. So, there was other episodes that transpired, following that initial incident to that court date, in which, if we were, amicable and we were symmetrical insofar as our futures together, um, it wouldn't have been, it would have been resolved, but it never got to that point. I wasn't willing to work with her to, to maintain our relationship.
She is saying she wants to continue a relationship. You are clear and know that you don't want one, and for a while, you're at least trying to play nice to
Yes.
have the illusion that maybe there is something there.
It,
So what happened? What were the other circumstances?
so it was a living, it was purgatory on earth. It was, I she was very much trying to get us to maintain a family. She was trying to get my son to open back up to her, even though he was scared of her. And, I had made that executive decision, Andy, that I knew I couldn't be around abuse anymore. It had just hit, it had bottomed out. It had just, I couldn't have my children around that. So I ended up putting my condo, up for sale, and, it went very quickly. Intermittently, I would meet my partner there with the baby, so I could see the baby and have some time with the baby. And she really used that as a leverage point to have time with me. Really, it wasn't about her. It was just about seeing my children. And there was a second episode, where she knew that I had essentially established a case against her because I, for custody's sake, I chronicled all of her history of abuse. DCF became involved after that initial incident, Andy, because there were two children present in the house when there's a domestic violence episode, and that automatically triggers a DCF investigation. So with that, that unto itself was just from me, who prides myself on devoting and being a dedicated dad, that was just so foreign to me. But obviously I was compliant and did everything I needed to do. But, I was chronicling everything that had happened to me in my phone. There were audio recordings, there were photos of the abuse. She had smashed my computer with a hammer. She had broken my glasses. She had ruined things in the condo. She had smashed walls, ripped doors off their hinges. And I had all of that information on my phone. She, in essence, destroyed my phone. She also realized that I had contacted an ex-boyfriend of hers who she communicated to me that she had a physical abusive relationship with. So I did reach out to him, and he was very receptive to me reaching out. And he did mention, I mean, they were young, they were in college, but he admitted that he had issues, especially when she was drinking, that she would punch him. What ended up happening was he contacted her following my contact with him. We were cleaning out. I had literally, the condo had sold. I was, signing the purchase and sale. It was ready to go. She just had to clean up. I left some stuff for her to pick up at the condo, and I agreed to meet her there to do that. And what ended up happening was that was another fatal mistake that I made, to trust myself alone with her at that point. She confronted me on reaching out to the ex-boyfriend because he actually reached out to her and saying, "Congratulations on your child. I wish you the best in your life ahead." So she started to realize that I was building a case against her, and she thought that the children, or our daughter, would be taken from her. So we had me arrested again that day.
Mm.
What ended up happening was she cornered me. She knew I would never lay my hands on her, and all the times, all the horrible nightmares, living those back, I would never lay my hands on her, and she knew that, and she would always block the door for me to be able to exit. So she would put her body in front of the door and not let me leave. And she had my phone, so there was no way I could call anyone. And so I ended up trying to escape from her. So I just ran into the bathroom. I closed the door. She tried to kick it down, and she after a few minutes, she stopped and she said, "Okay, I'm just going to cool off. We need to cool off. I'm just going to go get us coffees at Starbucks." And I breathed a sigh of relief. I'm like, thank the Lord. I can finally go. I can finally leave. I ended up leaving. I was moving things back to my parents' house, as I mentioned. I had to get everything out of the condo because the new resident was coming in literally the following week. So everything had to be out. There was a walkthrough scheduled. So that was an important date to get everything out. And I come back from dropping things off at my parents, and there's 5 police cars waiting for me at my condo. And I asked what was going on. And they said, "Are you so-and-so?" And I said, "Yes." And they're like, "You're under arrest for domestic violence." They didn't tell me what I did or anything like that. They just literally put me in the car, and I was taken again. And they, sh- it didn't surprise me, Andy. It didn't surprise me. It was her attempt at a desperate, like some sort of redemption against me, some sort of revenge. And she did it again. She was self-abusive. She admitted this. She hurt herself. She actually admitted this to our therapist, that she created self-harm. And that was her weapon against me.
So the first time you were arrested, were you just released the next day?
Yes.
All right.
I had
And
no
now you're
criminal record. Yep.
right. So you're arrested again. Is it the same experience that you're arrested a second time? Is it they just take you in, book you, and let you go?
It's a little bit more serious because keeping in mind it was about 2 months between the first and second incident. They Let's just say the bail was significantly higher and it was far more serious. Because this time around she wasn't on my side.
Mhm.
The second time around, she wanted me to go away.
Okay.
She realized that the relationship was over and she had stated that if we weren't together, she was going to ruin my life. And she was well on her way to doing that.
Yeah. How was the rest of your life impacted at this point? Was this in the news, in the local paper? Does it affect you at work?
Oh, it sure did. So so coming out of that second court appearance, I had a GPS bracelet where I was allowed to go to work. And, it was essentially a GPS bracelet. I just wasn't allowed to go where she lives, where she resides, which I was perfectly okay with. Obviously, it's very humiliating to have a GPS bracelet when you're a college professor. Um, and you have to try to explain that to your 8-year-old child. I, I managed it. I knew I had done nothing wrong. Maybe I was naive to the system. And looking back, of course I was, but I had 2 charges against me at this time. I had a GPS bracelet and a restraining order against me that was issued the second time. So the first time she signed the victim impact statement, she knew that she was in error. And she wanted to try to maintain our relationship, and win me back, so to speak. This time around, she knew that I was building a case against her, and then I had closed the door on our relationship. Now it was just vengeance. It wasn't it wasn't trying to be amicable at all. So with that came, her in the court trying to get my bail revoked, trying to send me to prison that second time. That failed, but they did put the GPS bracelet on me. But she got her wish about a month later. She got
What
her
happened
wish.
then?
Well, since I had a restraining order, obviously there's a no contact order as a result of that, and I had no reason to contact her. In fact, I I had wished she had disappeared from my life well in advance of this. Um, you know, the unfortunate reality is that that child's the real victim in all of this. But I remember it clear as day. It was a Thursday night, going into a Friday morning, and the the police show up at my door and communicate that there was contact between me and her, that I initiated some contact. And like they so they took me. They took me and I spent 72 days in prison.
72 days.
Sure.
Wow.
The story continues, but I had no I did not do that. She literally provided zero evidence to the police. But because I had those 2 charges against me, I think you're viewed through the eyes of, law enforcement as a criminal, as a thug, as someone that is a woman, abuses women. And that was none of those things. But at the end of the day, I was the one that was taken away. I spent 72 days in prison. I obviously lost my job. I received my resignation letter from my university in the mail at the jail. To add insult to injury, it was, it was, it was surreal. Uh, it was surreal. That's the only way to explain it. As someone that the only time I've ever stepped foot in the jail was, for a sociology class in high school to do an observation.
What was the most shocking part of this? Is it the actions of your abuser, or was it more the actions of the legal system?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that she was allowed to use the law, the legal system against me. She was able to gain her vengeance against me by abusing the system, and it was allowed. There was literally no evidence that I had ever done any of the things that I was accused of doing. Zero. And here I am at that point having 3 charges against me, 2 domestic assault and batteries, and a violation of a restraining order, none of which I had committed. And here I was, spending, 2.5 months in prison.
How did you maintain, or did you maintain any sense of hope during that time?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was, I, it was surreal. So I just embraced it at that moment. It was almost like a phenomenological study where I kind of became where I was, became part of the environment. And I think that helped me, accept it at that time, as difficult as it was. And, I actually made a lot of friends there. A lot of advocates, um, when I was able to share what had happened to me and why I was there. And, they called me the professor. They gave me I had some street cred there. So it was, I had to make the best of it. The only thing that really kept me going were, the notes from like my now partner and my son and my family. That's what kept me motivated. And as foreign as a place as that was to me, my friends to this day still can't believe that I was there,
Mm.
based on who I am. But at the same, it happened. It happened as a result of this current system and the way that it can be manipulated.
So you're in prison, 3 charges against you. I know you end up with more charges against you. So how do those unfold?
Yeah. So while I was in prison, I got slapped with another charge. I had um, a courier show up with a letter saying that I had, um, an intimidation of a witness charge against me. Um, that I tried to intimidate her, alleged witness, trying to coerce her. I guess allegedly it was for the, victim impact statement that I coerced her into signing that. And the police were, I guess, believed her. I don't know how that works, and I don't know how that's a very serious charge, actually. So without any evidence, I don't know how they were able to, just slap that charge on me. So while I was just sitting there, in the penitentiary, I got slapped with the fourth charge. So might as well add another one to the plate. I finally got out. House arrest, no job, couldn't leave, couldn't leave the house. Have, an 8-year-old child that I co-parent, have, split custody with. I it was a year of house arrest. So 72 days in prison, followed by a year of house arrest wearing an ankle monitor. Yes, you're allowed to leave if you get a job, but I had 4 charges against me. How can I get a job? And addition to that, I had there were some, there's some flexibility with being able to, when you're a parent, to be able to drop off or pick up your child to school, which of course I wanted to do. However, the um, the ex-partner, I literally had a meeting with the court, and um, a virtual meeting with a judge and my attorney. She blocked me from being able to drop off and pick up my son from school, and saying that our daughter had a pediatric dentist within 500 yards of the school, and I would know exactly when she would be there, and she was scared and threatened by me. So the judge didn't grant me the ability to pick up my child. So I was literally housebound. I couldn't leave. Um, it was that that was more painful than actually the 72 days in prison.
Mm.
Not being able to provide for your child, like I'm an active person. I'm a marathoner. I run like 50 to 60 miles a week. I have an ankle monitor on. I can't work. It was a very trying time.
Did you have any advocates, people you could, lean on during this time? Because I can't imagine the frustration of knowing you've done something wrong, but the entire system says otherwise.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, my best friend's a like a Boston police lieutenant, and he couldn't he couldn't even believe it. But at the end of the day, yes, I was blessed to have a very strong support with my family, my parents especially, and my partner Lauren, and my son. Kept me going. They kept my spirits up. It was in those instances, you almost need rituals. You need things. You need to be around family. You need some sort of because it can go the other way real quick. I'm sure. But just trying to be resilient. As someone that reads a lot, I write a lot. I started journaling, kind of capturing what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. I started my own company at that point, with kind of thinking forward, Andy, thinking that at some point I really need to be able to help others, because this is honestly such a trying time, and it was just unfathomable based on the fact that I committed no crime, and some individual that just was vengeful that I didn't want to be with her was able to use the system to penalize me in such a way that it crippled me, financially. I lose my job. I can't work. I can't be a dad. I can't coach. I can't be social. Everything, every element, every bucket of life other than like family was taken away. Um, but, interestingly, it was while I was on house arrest that I got my fifth charge. So I didn't even have to leave the house for this one. And, the police show up again, in the middle of the night. It was ironically a Friday night. And this individual understands that if you're detained on a Friday night, you're sitting in detention in a prison in a cell until Monday morning when the court's open. So again, strategically planned. This this individual set up a, a false Snapchat account and indicated that I had communicated to her via Snapchat and sent a distorted image of my child to her, and that's allegedly what she showed the police, and they took that as evidence enough that I should be detained and slapped with the fifth charge, which was the second violation of a restraining order. So that was the fifth and final charge. And I spent 3 nights, um, 3 nights. Fortunately, my attorney is very good and is a friend to this day because I've spent so much time with him. But he said, "There's no way that this happened. We got a tech expert involved. There was just no way. There was just literally no way that it came from my phone. I mean, none of these things came from my phone. It was scanned by a former FBI agent that has specialized in logistics and information systems, and they scanned my phone. None of it came from my phone."
So you got 5 charges against you, and you're really it feels like you're up against a criminal mastermind who knows the system, knows how to use it strategically to inflict the most pain onto you.
Mhm. Mhm.
How is there finally resolution and clearing of charges when it is just a she said, he said situation?
Yeah, it was a gradual process. The whole saying with the wheels of justice, well, they do turn very slow. That's for sure. So The the DA's office dismissed those two alleged restraining order violations. There was no evidence. She couldn't produce any evidence. So they just dismissed those. And then I had to go through trial on the other charges, one by one. And the jury found me not guilty on all. Um, I think I'm a pretty credible person because I've never committed a crime. And ultimately I was cleared of all charges. It took a long time. The irony behind the last charge, which was very recent, is that I left court that day and the criminal mastermind stalked me and literally knows where I live, knows what kind of car I drive. I know that she's been having me followed because it's been mentioned in probate court because I'm trying to gain some custody of my daughter. And it's been communicated that she's been having me followed. So she knows where I live. She knows pretty much some information about me that I don't know about her because I really don't care. I just want to eradicate her from my life. But that particular day, it was very recent. She, she called the police and said that I had violated the restraining order that I was. So that one nugget of information that I should communicate is that I do have currently a civil pending matter, which is the final restraining order that hasn't. It was extended last May and it expires after a year. So that hasn't been, even though all criminal matters have been absolved, that's still the one pending charge. So he ended up calling the police and saying that I was following her. And he has no reason to be in the town where I live. Literally the courthouse is 5 minutes from where I reside. And he was sitting out waiting for me to get home. And she called the police and said that I was following her, that I was stalking her. And they came to the door. My poor son was here. He was very concerned and scared because he's been around when the police have come and taken me. And that will never leave me. That, he's a wonderful young boy and he's very resilient. We have a great relationship, but just the fact that something so serious, like a charge like that can just be taken so, again, it's the criminal mastermind, but fortunately I got my lawyer on the phone. He explained that I left the court with him. We drove around and we were going to go celebrate. That was the fifth and final charge. That's 4 long years of my life that have been in and out of the courts, in and out of the system. And um, it's been really a long battle and it was time to celebrate. Instead, I was again in fear that I was going to be taken again, lose my job. It was, I almost had a panic attack. Fortunately, the police did the right thing at that time. They listened to me, they listened to my lawyer, and they realized that it was not a credible story. I wish they had done that diligence the previous times, but fortunately, but that just speaks to the character of this individual. It's still ongoing, and I don't understand. I don't understand it, quite frankly.
I believe if I was in a similar situation, I would really be interested in revenge, getting back. Did you consider charges against her or civil suits or anything like that? Or is that just beyond your personality?
That's a great question, and don't think that I don't spend a lot of my time thinking about that. I do believe that life has a way of working itself out. I think for me, the best form of revenge I can have is just by being successful and by sharing my story, by being able to help others that may be impacted. Obviously this is a hard story to duplicate, but I know that there's others out there that are faced with situations in which they're falsely accused of things, and it can be debilitating to your life. And that's why I really want to dedicate. I'm an educator and coach at heart. It's something that I love to do. I've been doing it, essentially my entire career. And, I want to be able to continue to do that. And I think that will give me personal solace. I think that will give me, um, the ability to look back on all of this that I've endured, and my family and the closest to me, they've been a part of this as well. And that's not lost on me. But, I think being able to really communicate the story, share my story, the messaging, and being able to help others is the best way to have revenge.
With the gift of hindsight, is there something you wish you knew back at the start? Is there one action that really would have made something different for you?
Yeah, it's the first signs of abuse. Obviously, abuse comes in many forms and looks a little bit differently, depending on the circumstance. But the physical abuse, once it starts, it continues. And in hindsight, that's where, especially when you have children in a household, especially that's that's where I wish I had just realized that I couldn't help this person. The only person that could help her was herself, and she chose not to do that.
What was the biggest challenge in not just rebuilding your life, rebuilding your sense of self and, being able to trust another person the rest of your life? What's the
Yeah,
biggest challenge in that?
it's been huge. You know, like I said, fortunately, I have amazing people around me, that amazing family, that keep me going, amazing friends, and that know me to the core and have kept me. But it's tough. I mean, I've been crippled in so many ways. I fortunately, my career path is back on track, but it was sidetracked for many years, and that's something that's my livelihood. I worked very hard to attain a certain place, and when that's taken from you, it's hard to it's hard to digest. The ability, when you have criminal charges, you can't do things like coach, things that I love to do, and that was really trying for me. Um, my child saying, "Dad, can you coach? Can you coach? Can you coach up my team?" And it's humiliating. It's public humiliation. Now, fortunately, not many people know what have happened to me and like outside of my close circles. So I have not been liberal with sharing my story, but I do think that my confidence was really destroyed for quite a long time in my belief in the system. When I've always tried to be someone that has done things the right way, treated people with kindness and respect, and I'll continue to live that way. I never stopped being that person, but at the same time, it's questioned that, that whole adage of, bad things can happen to good people. It's, I feel blessed. Like there's people in life that have worse off situations with terminal illnesses, and I feel blessed for what I have. But at the same time, it's been the journey's been very trying. I feel sick every time I think about a courtroom. It's just so foreign to me. It's not, and I think it's given me it's definitely made me a smarter person, but at the same time, it was a very challenging journey, and you feel alone a lot in that journey. You feel helpless because it's a criminal justice system, and with that, there's records. There is public records, and it's just very humiliating. I think that personal humiliation is not how the character of who I am and how I want to be represented to the general public.
I meet many men that have experiences, just a piece of this, a one false charge against them or a one bad experience in court, and it makes them so jaded and bitter and really decide that all women are evil and just they just stay full of hate. You do not come across that way at all. So, what has helped you the most in regaining your confidence and letting you be who you always were?
I not to go all spiritual here, but I do think, believing in a higher order, I think believing that the path will be the right path. Ultimately, it's just part of the journey. And, my parents are, are religious people. I mean, they believe, and their messaging has always been, you know, things will work themselves out. This is part of what was supposed to happen to you, whether you can make sense of it now at the time or not. It'll make sense at some point. And I've embraced that notion, Andy, um, because I don't want to be known as a bitter person. I don't want to be known as someone that feels jaded. I feel life's too short to live life that way. I do think that, I want to be able to promote this, what is personal, my personal voyage, like to be able to maybe fix some things that are wrong and or help people that need help. So, instead of saying I'm a victim and I'm victimized by all this, I'd rather change that narrative and say this is something that happened and it's not right and I want to change it.
From talking earlier, I know that a men's group helped you.
Yes.
Can you how beneficial, how supportive was that men's group for you?
Very. I thought it was, because again, a lot of the statistics say that, most incidents of domestic violence are men against women, which is factually accurate. But, Ann Silvers, our friend Ann, has dedicated a lot of her work to highlighting that it goes both ways. It's not just abuse of men against women. And of course, the Me Too movement didn't kind of help that. But at the same time, there's plenty of incidents where females abuse men, but law enforcement doesn't believe that. And so I think that there's, it's a flawed system. I think training, maybe law enforcement training could be, in how to handle certain situations instead of just, I've met with law enforcement I've met with a lot of them, and they acknowledge that it's not, it's a flawed system. Say if we show up and this is this, then we have to do this. And I understand there's a larger, you know, um, global conversation on that, but it's just the men's group helps you talk about these situations and realize that you're not alone, that there are other individuals out there, that it's not just men versus women or women versus men. It's just domestic violence in general. And that how can we stop that? So the group I was with was part of a coalition against domestic violence and finding initiatives and ways to, engage and talk about things like toxic masculinity and things of that sort, kind of dissolving some of the notions that, men are always the perpetrators of these, incidents. But it's just simply not the case. So,
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, people abuse people.
mhm.
Any type of person, the gender, age, it doesn't really matter. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's society, popular culture slants it that it's always just one direction.
absolutely.
Um, to follow that, what do you think the stigma around men being victims of physical abuse? What do you think that's rooted in?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can give a profound answer. I think that a lot of men don't want to admit that they've been a victim of domestic abuse. That's first and foremost. I've never been around abuse. I've never been around physical violence. So it was just so foreign to me that, you asked about the hindsight question. Naturally, I wanted to help someone versus run from them. And that's the messaging that I would employ, you know, moving forward to anyone that I would talk to, you can't, like they say, don't stick around, right? If it happens once, it's going to happen again. And I know it's not just rhetoric. It's, it's something that is a serious issue that, it happens in a household. It doesn't happen out in public for the most part. I mean, so it's very private. And, from in my instance, I was the one that was the victim, but yet she portrayed herself as as the victim, in every opportunity, and everyone believed her. That's where I find fault and flaw in our system, in our current system, when all I was trying to do, Andy, was protect my child, and that set up a series of events that really ruined my life, quite frankly, and really put my life on hold and had to rebuild in every possible way I'm still working through it.
So, Patrick, you did mention, just feeling that cringe in your guts, thinking about a courtroom or anything like that. Do you still have fear and anxiety related to your ex?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like a paranoia.
How do you deal with that, and how do you keep that from spreading to all potential partners?
It's, it's certainly not easy, because it's everyone in my household now is aware of this individual and is aware of what she's capable of in a sense. And I don't, I don't know how it ends. I don't know how it ends. I simply don't. But I can't worry about, all I can do is worry about how I control myself, how I treat others, and how I move forward. But I do think that, I've thought about moving out of state, honestly. I don't want her to know anything about me. I don't want her to know where I work, where I live. She knows all those things. And because she has me followed still to this day. And I have no idea what her motives are. I really don't. She's already taken so much from me. So I don't know where her end game is or what her end game is.
Is there anything top of mind, ways that you wish society and the legal system could better support male victims?
Yeah, I do. I wish I had a more profound answer, but I just think that the way that things compounded so quickly without any sort of like conversation, or understanding from where my vantage point, it was just, this happened. Okay. We believe it. This happened. Okay. We believe it. And there was literally zero evidence. The police cannot they provided zero evidence. And in fact, when even in one of the cases where the police testified in court, an officer, he fumbled around. He had no idea. Like he realized it was probably an error, like, based on the questioning from my attorney at the time. There was literally no check to see anything. There was zero repercussions. It was just, yep, we'll book them. So I think, I do think there needs to be far more education in how charges can destroy someone's life, something so serious that isn't even really investigated. There's no evidence. It's just, yep, okay, sure, but we'll let the courts handle it. And that's pretty much what happened. It's like, okay, well, we just did our job, but now let's pass the buck along to the courts and see what they do. And I just think that that's extremely careless and reckless, and I think it's flawed in many ways.
Do you have any advice besides don't stick around to any other man that finds himself in an abusive relationship?
I do. I think that one of the outcomes of this, in which this individual told me that she had targeted me. We were friends prior to being in a relationship. Um, she was just an acquaintance, but she saw how I treated others. She saw how I was a dad to my son, how kind I was, and she she admitted that she targeted me. That she said, I baby trapped you. who said, this is one thing that I didn't explore with you in our conversation, but she mentioned that when we first were in a relationship, when we evolved from friends into, a relationship, that she wanted to have a baby with me, that she didn't care if we were ever married, but she wanted someone with my looks and my smarts and the way that I was. So she was, so from the get go, she lied. And so I think that people are targets. They may not know it or not, but if you are successful, if you're, I specifically think of young men who, I work a lot in the sports space, and I think about, college athletes, and now that they're millionaires and, with NIL deals, I really, a lot of my work is going to be focused on, alerts, like alerting yourself. You're a target. You're a target for a lot of things. And you see a lot in today's um, sports media about allegations against professional athletes because they're targets. So I think if you're a lawyer, if you're a successful person, you could be a target and you may not know it.
Mm. Patrick, I want to thank and commend you. I know this has been a long, trying journey, and your courage and bravery and vulnerability and speaking openly about it in the hopes that someone else doesn't have to go through what you've gone through, and that the legal system, how police investigate things or don't, just automatically leaving one person in a split second, helping to bring some light to all those issues and bring change. What's the best way for people to connect with you or learn more about your coaching or what have you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Andy. I mean, connecting via LinkedIn, I think would be amazing. I can share that with you, but I do think that that's the best way to communicate. And in fact, I want to continue this work, and I want to continue this messaging and being proactive in this community to help men, to help the global community at large that want to discuss this, want to have some good dialogue about what's going on.
Awesome. Again, thanks, Patrick, for joining us today. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us. Please visit realmenfeel.org. We'll have a blog post for this episode. We'll have links to various resources, book support mentioned. Wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, please subscribe, follow, like, share this with somebody, post a review or a comment. And indeed, this is an important episode to share with someone that you think might possibly be in a similar situation like this, having gone through it or being in the middle of it. And if you need more support around this, I invite you to book some time with me. Visit theandygrant.com/talk. Have a free clarity call with me, and we'll see if there's anything I can offer you, other pointers beyond, if something in this conversation wasn't enough to get you to the help you need and deserve. I'm glad to talk to you. Whew. And until next time, be good to yourself.